Natalia Bonner. Happy November! Welcome to Let's Stitch Year of Stars. Today we're going to be stitching Bryan's star, another awesome star quilt block. So before we actually get stitching, there are a few things I do want to tell you about. I've been having so much fun with this stitch along. If you look close at my stitch along, you can see, or at this stitch along quilt, you can see that there are a few different sashing and border designs that I am sharing here on these sashing areas and borders. I have created a few little video tutorials teaching you step by step how to machine quilt those designs. So look below, we do have links for each of those. Now, besides that, we do also have a piecing workbook available. We have a machine quilting workbook, plus lots of awesome other notions available over on our website, pieceandquilt.com. Let's get stitching. I'll start out this quilt block design by stitching in the ditch all the way around the outside. Once I have completed the stitch in the ditch work, now I'm ready to dress it up just a little bit. On this block, I'm going to create kind of a secondary design to make it look like it has a nice frame. So, dividing this block into sections, starting in the first section, I'm going to stitch in the ditch. After I've stitched in the ditch, from there I'm going to add an echo that's 1/4 inch from the outside of the block. After I've added that 1/4 inch echo, then I'm going to travel into the inside and add another 1/4 inch echo on the inside. Notice how the echo just goes around the square block. I want it to look like my stitching runs right into the triangles, so it kind of looks like it's hiding behind the triangles, like maybe the piecing creates an illusion that it's on top of the quilting. Once I've stitched those foundation lines, then I'm going to start filling in the section that I've created with those figure eights. Now, when I get to my corner, I am going to grab my ruler and a blue Mark Be Gone marker and mark an angular line through the corner. I'm going to stitch these figure eights right up into that corner to make them look like they get smaller, or stitch them as if they are getting smaller as I get into the corner. That creates a really nice mitered look and a great way to finish off your corners. With that line, I'll simply mist it away with a little bit of water and some baking soda. Once I've stitch that portion, then I'll continue on with those figure eights, filling in that section of the quilt block design. Once I finish that section, now I'm going to move on to the next section where I'll repeat this same process. As I do my machine quilting, I like to work back and forth between rulers and free motion. I have my extended base plate on my machine and I keep it on there pretty much all the time. However, if you prefer to work, do all of your ruler work and then come back and do all of your free motion quilting, you can totally do that too. The order that I do is just because for me, I like instant gratification. I like to stitch one section and finish it off completely, see how cool it's going to look. From there, I'll continue stitching, filling in that section with those figure eights. Once I've completed the stitching on that section, now I'm going to travel over to the next corner where I'm again going to repeat the same process. Now I mention all the time, I love the look of Stitch in the Ditch, so I'm going to travel along my ditches from one point to travel to the next. In this next section, I'll repeat that process starting out by adding that echo line, and then I'll fill in again with those figure eights. Once I've filled in that section completely with the figure eights, now I'm going to travel by stitching in the ditch around those darker blue blocks. However, this time, let's just see what we can add to the blocks. In that top triangle, I'm going to use the largest curve on the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler and stitch a point-to-point curve. Then when I get to the next block, I'm going to actually just free motion quilt point-to-point curves. You could use the mini or this medium size on the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler and stitch those point-to-point curves. After I've stitched those, then I'll travel in the ditch around the next light pink triangle, and I'm going to then fill in that triangle with some figure eights, starting out small and then getting larger as I get to the center, and then going small again as I get to the corner. I'll repeat this process moving on to the next triangle. Then from there, I'll repeat that point-to-point curved line in the next dark blue block. From there, I'll continue working my way around the blocks. So you can definitely see how I work back and forth between designs. I feel like if I do that, I don't get bored. It's something new that I'm working on for the next block. So I'll continue on adding those figure eights and then stitching in the ditch. Use the largest curve on the mini 4-in-1 to add a simple point-to-point curved line in that top triangle. Now I feel like I've worked on that section enough, so I'm going to move down and start working on the next corner section, starting with that stitch, that echo stitch that's on the inside, and then moving towards the inside of the block and adding one more of those echo stitches. After I've added that second row of echo stitch, then again, I'm going to fill in with those figure eights. And don't forget to add your little marking for your mitered corner. Once I've completed that section, now I'm going to continue working my way across the block, starting with that first light pink triangle. I'm going to stitch in the ditch around that and then fill it in completely with figure eights. Then from there, moving to the next dark blue block and stitching point-to-point curves. From there, I'll travel to the next background light pink block where I'll stitch in the ditch around it and fill in with figure eights. Next, I'm going to travel, stitching the ditch along the bottom side of that dark blue triangle, then stitching a point-to-point curve. From there, again, going back to the light pink triangle and filling that in with the figure eights. On that corner blue block, then I'll stitch some point-to-point curves. Like I mentioned, I did stitch all of mine free motion. I highly encourage you to try both ways. Some ways it's easier to just stitch point-to-point curves like that free motion, and sometimes I do prefer to use my ruler. So I highly encourage you to try both and see what works best for you. From there, I will continue on stitching that point-to-point curve in the last dark blue triangle and filling in the final light pink background triangle with those figure eights. From there, now I'm going to adjust, and again I'm going back to that point-to-point line. I'm going to stitch a point-to-point curved line around each of those lighter blue triangles. I like continuing what I've done more on the outside of blocks on the inside. So I stitched this design in the outside dark blue one, so I'm going to stitch it again here. Once I've stitched the point-to-point curved line, then I'll adjust my ruler and stitch in the ditch around the center light pink block. Then from there, I'll adjust my ruler and stitch a point-to-point curve on the inside of that pink block. Here I am still working with the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler, but on some of these curves you might also want to try the mini inside out machine quilting ruler. It may be a little bit more comfortable to hold. Once I've stitched out the first set of point-to-point curves, I'm going to dress this block up just a little bit and add a second set of these point-to-point curves. So this is another one of those designs that I do teach you step by step how to quilt in my Stitch Along Let's Stitch a Block a Day. So if you haven't checked that out before, make sure you do check that out. There's 365 different quilt block designs. From there, I'll complete this design by misting away any marked lines. Now, if you do want to see another version how to quilt this quilt block, make sure you do check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Natalia Bonner. Have a great day, everybody.